Welcome in, Buckeye backers. We got some boys from the college football dogs to join us today. Say hello, Mike Germanese.
What's going on, gentlemen? How are we doing today?
Or Buckeye backers, you could say boo because he's a Michigan fan. That's fine. And Rodney Potts, another Ohio State Buckeye from the college football dogs. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good. All right, we got to get it in the intro, and then we got that big ass number 2 versus number 5, top 5 showdown in Columbus. But let's get to this intro, and we'll get right back to it.
Proud of our young people, and most especially in 310 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
No, Prince's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Michael Jenkins on 4th and 1. Holy Buckeye! Under pressure, throws it. Incomplete. The Buckeyes win.
It's so easy to be average. The hell with that. We don't want to coach average. Did you push yourself to be great today? Did you do it? If you didn't do it, you lost today.
Dale Jones gets the snap, fakes a run, drops back to pass, fires long. Down the right side, going toward the end zone, and it is caught! Touchdown! And it's Devin Smith again. Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins!
Pitches to Archer Griffin, number 45, and Griffin fighting up the sideline. And he gets it into Michigan territory. A great individual effort. Across the 20-yard line. Eddie Jordan finds the hole.
Smith in trouble. Spins away from it. 40, 45, 50. 35. Troy Smith to throw. Steps up. Delivers deep down the field. He's got a receiver. Olave. Touchdown Buckeyes.
And a spot in the national championship game. It's on the way. No good. He hooked it. And Georgia is going to survive.
I haven't scored a touchdown in a long time, so it felt good. Give all the credit on the word of God. And when I'm coming around the edge and I see JT punch it out, I said it downstairs. There's no chance in hell I was diving on that ball. I was trying to scoop and score it no matter what.
Howard runs it. First down, Moore slides down inside the 40. Ohio State.
Here we go, a big matchup in the shoe. It's been a long time since there's been a top 5 matchup in the shoe, and this time it is at noon. Awesome. Just what us Buckeye fans wanted, another nooner. But, game day is going to be there. Big noon is going to be there. So it's going to be packed. It's going to be wild. They're calling all over social media to get the Buckeye fans into the game because the shoe's been a little bit dead for these nooner snoozers. So what do you think? Do you think the Buckeye fans are going to show up? Stand, get loud?
For this top five matchup, you needed to get to the Big Ten championship game. 100%. Yep. It should have been the 8 o'clock main course, not the 12 o'clock appetizer. But we have about $1 billion from Fox to thank for that. So I guess Big Ten really can't complain.
Yeah.
But
they got the money. And that money's going to be used for the right causes for NIL. I mean, Michigan had a bunch of nooners last year. They got that NIL with Bryce Underwood, so they got the number 1 quarterback coming in. So there's a reason. There's money for it. It just sucks for atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. It sucks for teams like Michigan, Ohio State, because you're such a big draw. You're always going to be the one Fox picks.
Yeah.
For sure.
If you're playing a decent team, you're getting that noon time slot. And this year, Ohio State's really good, so they got it. Last year was Michigan.
If you're winning, you're noon on big noon kickoffs, right? So let's get into this Indiana game. Man, everyone thinks Ohio State's got that two score spread. Do you think it's going to go more than that, less than that? What do you got? What's your opinion to start?
Ohio State by at least 18.
18.
Easy.
Ooh, all right.
Easy.
13. I think the 2 score, I think Vegas has got it right. 2 scores sounds good to me. Sounds like right where it would be. I could see a touchdown, a field goal, 2 touchdowns. Either way, to me, it sounds like Vegas is right. Vegas is always right. But, hey, Indiana, they are on a heater, man. Curt Cignetti came in. He said he was going to change the culture. He said he was going to change the atmosphere. He said Purdue sucks. He said, but so does Michigan and Ohio State. Well, you know what? He's answered one of those questions already, along with entertaining that atmosphere in Indiana. If you've been to Bloomington this year, you know it is on fire, dude. The stands are full, and it's not from other teams' fan bases. This is insane, man.
It's like
the run that they're on.
It went from being a basketball school to a football school in a very short time.
Absolutely. I mean, he comes in and just changes the entire dynamic. It's awesome. It's great to see. I love to see it. I just don't like it this week. That's it.
And no one's seen it coming. That's the best part.
Yeah, what do you got, Rodney?
Yeah, I was like, you don't like it when you play them, but every other week is great. Watching them beat up on Michigan, I was like, this is sick. And then I was like, we get them in 2 weeks.
And you know what? I'm just going to come straight into this video. So we're going to talk through it, but Kurtis Rourke, most of this video is all about him and what he can do in the passing game. There is a little bit of defense in there. There's a little bit of other offense, but Kurtis Rourke's just all over the place. The one thing that Buckeye fans should know is his back shoulder throws and his ball placement is just off the chains, man. Awesome. He can fit it in tight spaces. He can do whatever you want. He can run the RPO. He can even run it. He just hasn't run it this year. At Ohio, he was running all over the place before he transferred to the Hoosiers. Man, look at some of those throws. They're just nasty. Right over a top defense in Michigan. Back shoulder is where Ohio State sucks. And that's just a hard play to defend anyway, but they do it better than anyone else, and they do it more than anyone else.
Well, if you look at Indiana, they average 276 passing yards a game. Mm-hmm. Ohio State averages 267. So they're
right with each other.
Yeah, they definitely can throw the ball.
And I slowed that down a little bit because they come off their routes good. The receivers are running good routes. They have wide receivers downfield blocking. They have a running back that can truck people if they need to. This is not – and then the defense is great. They're a ball-hawking defense. Picking off here against Nebraska, Dylan Raiola got picked off. I just wanted to show some of that and highlight some of those awesome plays from Rourke because it's going to be – in my eyes, it's going to be a closer game than some people may think, and including Ohio State fans. Just be ready for it to be a dogfight.
What Cignetti showed is what you can do when you get the portal right, because he added a lot of pieces from the portal. But then you look at a team like Florida State that shows you what happens when you get it wrong.
Yeah.
So it's one of those.
It can backfire for sure.
It's one of those things. When you get it right, you can be really good. But if you get it wrong, it's going to be a long year, and he definitely got it right this year for Indiana. It should be a good game. I think Ohio State pulls away late. I think they have, well, except that at offensive line now. I think Ohio State has more weapons. And I'll be honest, 20-15 over Michigan at home. I thought they were going to blow Michigan out in that game.
Yeah, they should have.
Yeah, and what happened in that second half? The pressures on Rourke seemed to be the difference.
He only had 206 yards, 2 TDs in that game.
And most of that was in the first half. I think he only had like 18 yards in the second half.
Yeah, he threw that pick on the goal line, that RPO slant. He threw it right to him, and that just killed it.
Mm-hmm. And your defense is a lot better. He's going to have a hard time. I think the hard part about Indiana is their schedule. I don't think anybody really knows how good they really are yet. They played
competition, 100th in the nation in strength of schedule. They haven't played anyone with a winning record, you said, except for Washington?
They played one team above 500 in Washington.
Yeah. The one thing that I will say is they waxed most everyone on their schedule. Beat everyone by 2 scores. So at least they're beating the bad teams and dominating. That's something that shows you it builds confidence, number one. So if Ohio State lets them stay in the game till the fourth quarter, watch out because that confidence is going to get skyrocketing, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem. Couple turnovers, and this is a game.
You can't have the start you had against Northwestern.
No.
Not at all. You got to come out flying.
You let them believe they can stick around in this game, it's going to be a long Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, you can't have turnover.
No, not in the first half either. And if Curt Cignetti goes in at halftime, you better believe that boy's going to say a speech that gets that team wild and ready to go.
And the one thing I'd be worried about too is they're coming off a bye, so you don't know what these guys are going to come up with.
Yeah,
he's like the mad
scientist. I would expect a lot of trick plays too. I mean, pull out all the stops. This is the one win that you have to show the playoff committee, hey, number one, we belong, and number two, hey, they have a chance of being ranked number one if they knock off Ohio State.
Yeah, and if they lose by more than 10, there's a good chance they don't even make the playoffs. So they have a lot riding on this game.
For sure. So we talked about strength of schedule, but we got to talk about Rourke. He's 71.8% in his passing efficiency, 2,410 yards, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But turn that around and look at what Will Howard is doing. 72.9 beats him there. 2,484 yards beats him there. 30 total touchdowns, including the rushing. So beats him there. Also beats him with the 5 interceptions, though. And it's just one more. No big deal. We just got to keep a hold of the ball against this team. And against any big team, you can't really have turnovers. But let's talk about where Ohio State could get burnt. Denzel Burke, since that Oregon game, he's been targeted 19 times. 17 times of those targets, he's given up a catch. So only 2 has he had a pass breakup. All of those added up 277 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is not an all-world corner like we thought. And this pass defense, 23 completions of 20-plus yards all year. And those back shoulders, like I talked about earlier, those are the one that's killing them. There's been a lot of times where Burke and the other DBs have been in the right spot. And Igbinosa, he's very handsy. So every time he goes to break up a pass or he's guarding a guy downfield, I worry about a flag. And that can change momentum quickly too. So the passing game, particularly the pass defense, is where I want to see Ohio State get some pressures. And you saw it against Northwestern last week. They dialed up the pressures. They just weren't hitting home.
Yeah, if Indiana can get their 2 big receivers, what's their name? Elijah.
Surratt.
Surratt or Omar Cooper, you're going to see him try to take the defensive back, and you're going to see him try to line him up one-on-one, and Rourke's going to come right at him. If Burke's not up to the
struggled a little bit against Michigan when they got some pressure. That second half is where he struggled. Ohio State has to find a way to get some pressure. They get pressures, but they don't always hit home.
Like, I want to see CJ Hicks. Like, if this is a time to let him rush, it's now. Like, you saw him get one late against Northwestern. He had that thing with the notebook where he said, put me on the edge. They put him on the edge. He got there. Like, this is the time. If you want to send him, keep him happy.
He's ready. And Sonny Styles is coming into his own, too, at linebacker. So I think he'll probably hit those holes a little quicker. In the beginning of the season, he was, doing the switch from safety to linebacker, so wasn't quite ready for it. This is the end of the season. This is November ball. This is when it really counts, like, for all the marbles now. Now, this is a team that expected to be in the national title hunt. They're still there, but these last 2 games are the big ones.
Definitely got to show up. You're going to need Knowles to call a good game this game.
Mm-hmm.
You can't give up 486 yards like you did against Oregon.
I do think
Knowles is
hooked.
You got to bring the pressure. You got to keep Rourke uncomfortable. If you let him get comfortable, if you guys start off slow, it's going to be a long Saturday.
Yeah,
what's up, TJ? TJ Chapman says hi.
Oh, man.
What's up, TJ?
Good man.
Man, they get a clear picture for Rourke, and if he knows what you're doing, you can't stop it. You can throw the back shoulder, RPOs all day. They're not that great in the run game, like traditional-wise, but they just throw screens. And we defend screens well, but it only takes one to bust open for 70 yards.
What's a Wolverine doing on a Buckeye show? Eventually, we throw him a bone every now. We actually felt bad for him this year. It was just sad.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Not at all. You're exactly right. We don't feel bad for you. Not one bit.
It's okay.
Ohio State's actually 40.8% pressure rate, which is first in the Big Ten. They just don't have a lot of sacks. So they're getting there. They're making the quarterback throw it. But quarterbacks have been making plays against Ohio State, and particularly in that Oregon game. Man, I didn't see any pressures in that game.
No, they would. I think the only time they got anywhere near Gabriel was when they just didn't block JT, and he got close, but they just said, hey, let him go. We're going to throw a shot down the sideline.
And it seems like Noel's defense right now, these last 2 years, has been designed in big games just to keep everything in front, not let those big plays. Like when we brought him in those 2 years, we were just giving up big plays, chunk plays. He's trying to keep those chunk plays to a minimum, keep everything in front, and do the bend but don't break defense. So that doesn't dial up a lot of pressures. It doesn't look sweet, but statistically, they're the best defense in the country.
Yeah, but the problem is that defense sometimes costs you games too.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you got to have that happy medium.
You're not playing to win the game. You're just playing not to lose it. Like you can look at
it depends on the team. You know, if you can keep them from scoring once they get in the red zone and actually bend but don't break, you're fine. But if you get those long shots keeping those cornerbacks on an island and Burke just gets toasted, you're screwed.
Like that's the good thing about Ohio State. They're ranked second right now in college football for red zone defense. So he does have that. Even if Indiana gets down there, they're good at getting stops, not letting points in.
Now, the big news of the day that's shuffling around at the offensive line. I know everyone's heard about it by now. Seth McLaughlin, Achilles injury is out. Josh Simon lost earlier in the year against Oregon. So one shuffle is tough, man. Tough enough. And they gelled. They got it together for Penn State. That was a big win. Everyone got real excited about that because it just seemed like they had Carson Hinsman in the right place at guard, and he came into his own. It was good to see him like kind of take a step back and then a huge step forward, and really they gelled on the offensive line. Now, what happens again? Now we lose another guy, another All-American, another stud. It came in from Alabama. Holy shit, what do we do now? Like, you can't lose two key cogs on an offensive line and expect efficiency. Well, the good thing about Ohio State and the things that happen is Carson Hinsman was at center last year. Sounds like that's where he's going to be. I mean, reports are coming out that he is definitely going to be the starting center, at least to start. And then Austin, I can't pronounce his last name, Shiver.
I think
he's going to go to guard. So he's had some playing time too. So we'll see how things end up. I liked to see Hinsman stay at guard and shuffle around a little bit differently. Now you have two guys at new positions again, and in the meat of the schedule in November against a top 5 team and then against the rivals. We'll see how it goes, and you might see some shuffling around in game depending on what happens.
Well, the good thing for Ohio State is
huge loss.
This is why you recruit. So there's got to be some talent in those rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Just figuring out how you're going to use it and where to put them.
And Day said the game doesn't care. And he kind of said that last week a little bit too when they were talking about Tate, everything that happens off the field. The game doesn't care. Once you step out on the field, no one gives a shit. You just got to win. And fans don't care. The media doesn't care. No one cares if Ohio State loses because they lost an offensive line. They got to get it together. It's actually next man up.
Most people enjoy it. But any big team
thanks.
Any big teams like that, right? It's not like anybody was crying when Alabama lost to Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
No, not at all. I mean, everyone wants to root for the underdog for sure.
Oh, Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois.
Yeah, that was absolutely awesome. We were all loving it. I just think this is a bigger deal than a lot of people are making it out. I know Ohio State recruits well, but the offensive line was really the struggle. They don't recruit well on the offensive line year in and year out. They are deep, but losing those studs is always a big deal. We'll see how it turns out. First thing you watch is how Indiana's defensive line does, how much pressure they get on Will Howard those first few drives, and if they can settle into their own and kind of maul at the end, that's what we need to see them gel together.
It's going to be trying to get them comfortable, right? A couple of quick hitting passes, not making them do too much. If you want to get them to these long drawn out plays,
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State's going to be in trouble with those two guys out. But if you're 1, 2, 3, ball's gone, let guys like Ibaka or Smith use their speed, Tate use their speed, let them get comfortable, keep the defensive line guessing. Then I think you're going to have a way to minimize them not being there.
Yeah, Emeka Egbuka is due for a breakout game. He's just that dude that's been there forever, and he just hasn't got the ball because some freshman comes in and takes all the limelight. I'd love to see him have a big game, and he did against Oregon, so it's a big game, and he usually shows up for the big ones.
Yeah, say 12 touches against Oregon. I think he's had 12 total since then.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is this where they use him in the backfield? They did a little bit last too. They tried to run that like wide receiver pass. Looked like they were trying to get Tate one early. So
for sure.
The time you do that again, put him in the backfield, let him run it. Just get him the ball, man. He's a vet. He's been there. Get him 10, 12 touches, no matter what you got to do to get it.
He's just
we're also going to have to see Will Howard. We're going to have to see Will Howard take off with the ball, not hold himself in the pocket because that offensive line shuffle. He's going to have a time clock that's just a little bit quicker than he's used to.
And they can roll him out too. How is Will Howard when it comes to rolling and throwing the ball? It's not staying in the pocket, not completely being set, but being able to throw on the run, improvise a little bit.
Downfield.
He's a little deceptive.
Oh,
because he's got good speed. He's a big dude. It just seems like it takes him a little bit to get going. He doesn't have a real big first step, but he's got a powerful step. All right. John says should be a great game. 24-21, Indiana. All right, John. Woo. He's got the Hoosiers.
Yeah, if we only score 21, I don't like our chances.
No, not at all. And it really is going to come down to the turnover game. Because you saw the game that really Indiana struggled with the most in terms of offense was Maryland, who's probably comparable to Ohio State's offense as far as the skilled receivers go. So Ohio State should be able to get plenty of yardage through the air against this defense if, Maryland is an example.
The turnovers are going to be big.
Absolutely. And that's where Will Howard has been great this year, but in big games.
Yeah,
he's had some oops moments.
It's like
and really, this is a game where you can't have one of those oops moments because you give them that confidence like we talked about earlier, and they're going to take it to the bank, man. They're going to score on turnovers if we get
if you look at Indiana's plus 10 in the turnover margin compared to Ohio State, who you would think would have a lot of turnovers, it's plus 4.
Yeah.
So Indiana, a lot of what they do is built on getting those turnovers. They're almost like an Iowa defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get the turnover, good field position, quick score.
Yeah, and I think it was Potts who had 2 interceptions against Washington. I was at that game in the press box and then on the field for one of those interceptions. It was pretty cool. It was cool seeing Indiana, being on the field there, and that stadium was electric, which reminds me, I got something to show you later about the electric stadium in Indiana. But before we do, we got to get things a little bit spicy. So Danos is calling our name. We got to pay the bills, so Danos is the one to get us paid. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum. Yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some.
Dano Seasoning, food's favorite flavor.
Yum, yum, get you some.
I'm Joe Burrito, your favorite burrito. Whoa, whoa.
Joe, we all know you're the best.
What?
You can always do better. Try the new Dano's Hot Chipotle.
Hey. Ooh, that's spicy. Yum, yum.
Yum, yum, get you some.
That commercial gets me every time. Makes me hungry. At least I got my coffee here to settle my stomach just a little bit. So now we got to get into a little bit deeper of a conversation. Indiana and the college football playoffs. What the hell are these whining little bitches in the SEC talking about? It's December when they're going to be coming to the Midwest, and it's already snowing, man. It's only the 21st of I don't even know what day it is, November. And man, we got to get this snow. Let it go.
I can't wait to watch Southern teams finally come down north to play games.
Yeah.
Like, I would love Tennessee going to Penn State in middle of December and trying to throw the ball when it's 15 degrees and 3 inches of snow.
We gotta get Shannon in here. Shannon was a college football coach, and he runs a Hoosier tailgate podcast. So I'm gonna get him on in here, and he's gonna tell us kind of what he thinks about where Indiana's strengths are and where Indiana can attack Ohio State, things of that nature. So Shannon, welcome to the show, my man.
How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Hoosier tailgate. How you been, man? This season's been awesome for you.
Yeah, it's been a great one. And tonight has been crazy because my computer and internet connection has been very, very wonky. Let's just put it that way.
That's all right, man. Hey, we'll extend the show a little bit and let you talk a little bit of Indiana football. So let's get right into it. We were talking about college football playoff. We'll hold that off for a second.
Okay.
Tell us how you think Indiana's best suited to attack this Ohio State defense.
Well, they've got to continue to do what they've done for the better part of the year, and the RPO game for them and how Curtis Rourke has handled that all year long has given a lot of defensive coordinators nightmares because they're never right. Tony Elliott, when Indiana played Nebraska came in 5-2, and Indiana put 56 on them. And Tony Elliott he could never be right because the RPO game just took advantage of him, and Indiana put their defense in conflict the better part of the day that Saturday. And, last week against Michigan, second half of Michigan, I think Indiana hit the brick wall a little bit. I saw some heavy legs. They had lost their left guard the Thursday prior to the Michigan game, Evans, to a torn Achilles heel, the same injury that the center for Ohio State just had happened to him this week.
And you're a coach. Let me stop you there. Yeah. You lose 2 of your starting offensive linemen. That is a huge deal. That's the foundation of the team.
Yeah, well, for Indiana, depth has always been probably their biggest, not to use Achilles heel again, but their biggest problem has been their depth overall, especially within their interior linemen. Now, Evans and that core group of 5 had played every snap of every Indiana game from week 1 up through, week 9 prior to the Michigan game. So they never really had any subs playing in those games, here and there maybe, but not to the extent that you would get comfortable with that first 5 unit. And I think that showed a little bit against Michigan, just from the continuity and guys being used to playing next to one another.
Sure.
So it does have has an impact. Now with Ohio State, their center was that, he came from Alabama, and the center that was starting there prior to him, I think they moved him to like right guard or something. So
he was out to start the season.
Okay.
And then just recently, after we lost Josh Simmons against in October 12th, he moved to guard.
Yeah, you've lost 2 offensive linemen up front. Well, and so I guess my point was being that because the center that had been starting prior to this year had been playing, and they're just kicking him over to his natural position, because centers and guards are pretty much interchangeable in today's game. I mean, again, you got to be able to snap the ball.
It's the headpiece part.
Yeah, right. Well, and snapping the ball is no easy task in today's game with all the gun stuff. But Ohio State's never really had a depth problem in their interior line. Now, they may have had some young guys that they've had to play with that were redshirt freshmen or true sophomores. But, does it have an effect on a game? It can, just because of the fact that there's new bodies in a game that maybe have not gotten a lot of snaps. And I don't know what the rotation's been there. That's just something that I've noticed with Indiana for the entire year. They've played every snap of every game since day one. And I don't know if that was Bo Stead's, the offensive line coach from Indiana's plan, was because it was a new group. He wanted them every bit of game reps that they could get. And that's what they did. And so, it's ironic that Indiana and Ohio State have lost two of their top offensive linemen this year. We lost the kid from James Madison that blew his knee out in camp, that they were expecting to be a pretty dominant player because he was at JMU. Well, he was lost before even the season started. Then you add into Evans. So now, just like you're down two guys in a very important
studs.
Yeah. So, it can be a problem, especially center, because you got a quarterback that, he's taking snaps from every kid that's going to snap it back to him, whether he's underneath or in the gun. But there is a little bit of comfortability problem there when you haven't done it live action. So it can be a problem.
And then, and now it's against the best of the best too. So
sure.
It makes a bigger difference. And the glaring hole, no pun intended, can be actually a glaring hole now.
Right. Exactly. And, the bye week for Indiana came at I don't want to call it a bye week because it's really not the correct vernacular. The off week for Indiana couldn't have come at the best time for them as a total team. Be it offense, be it defense, even the coaches. You're at that point of the year now that every
heavy feet, like you said.
Right. You get a little heavy legged, expect everybody's got something wrong with them. They're all beat up, especially the interior linemen on both sides of the ball. So they're all playing with something. And
we started to talk a little bit about some underrated players, maybe that the rest of the nation won't know. You'll know them well. And Pons was one of them. John, one of our listeners from YouTube, said, arguably the best cornerback in the country. Who are some other guys on the defense or on the offense that are kind of unsung heroes that the rest of Buckeye Nation might be on the lookout for, rather than, the stars? We all know about Curtis Work. We know about Surratt.
Yeah. Aiden Fisher and Walker, their two inside linebackers, are the driving force of that defense, just like Ohio State's kids that they have in that important position at the linebacker spot, because those guys are essentially the quarterbacks of the defense. So those guys have been playing very well, and they do have some guys in behind him that can spell them here and there, especially Walker. He's a little beat up now and then. But I really think the defensive line for Indiana, which was a glaring problem coming out of spring camp, out of spring football, was their most needed position on their football team heading into the spring period of the portal and stuff. And they were able to get CJ West who played at Kent State, and he was a phenomenal MAC player. He's not 6'4", he's 6'2", but he's a load, and he's got quick hands and he moves well. And I think the defensive down four for Indiana has been probably one of the brighter spots defensively heading into this season, because there was a big question mark there. And the Kamara kid is a beast. I don't know how many sacks he's got on the year. I think he's well in the double digits now.
And does he play at nose guard a little bit?
They move him around. He'll play at nose, he'll play a 3, he'll play a 5. And that's one thing that with Indiana's defense, when you look at it structurally, you kind of, is it a 3-4, is it a 4-2-5, and how their alignment. But with Brian Haynes, their defensive coordinator, his mindset is he wants to be aggressive. He does give the kids out on the field some freedom in terms of their alignment. So as long as they're in the position prior to the snap of the ball, they're kind of free in that situation where they can align, and they love to be aggressive, and they'll throw the man, they'll play man. He's not afraid to play man. Now I don't know how much that will come into play Saturday, because you guys got a pretty talented group of receivers, and one of them is a true freshman who's 6'3" and runs like a gazelle.
It's almost like damned if you do, damned if you don't, though.
Well,
if you cover up any of them, really, then one of the other guys is going to make a play.
And
so
that's
we were
really
just talking about how we thought Ibuka might have a breakout game because Tate just had a great game, and Ennis has been playing good, and then you have Smith, the freshman who runs like a gazelle, who has a 99-yard catch radius.
Yeah,
what do you do?
Well, the biggest thing, and defensively, what you don't want to do is give up cheap scores. You want to make whoever you're playing against, you want to make them earn their scores, and field position becomes vitally important, especially in a game like this that's coming up on Saturday. If an offense can drive it consistently 80 to 75 yards, and you're not giving up the big plays or the explosive plays a lot, and they're driving it on you with consistency, you tip your hat and say, great job, because that's probably the hardest thing for any offense to do consistently is drive 80 yards or 75 yards with any consistency.
Without making a mistake here and there, too.
Right. And so, what Pons has done, and I think why he's such a really good cover corner, even though he's about a 5'10", 5'11" type of guy, he battles and he'll pound you pretty good off the line of scrimmage. So you're not going to get a free release on him if he's up playing you hard. Even if even if he's undersized, he's found a way to keep guys from catching the ball, distractions, and he's even taken some PI penalties because it was probably the right thing to do. Better give up 15 than to give up 80. And that's where he's been pretty smart. And, overall, that's what has made him a pretty special guy. And, Georgia wanted him really bad. There was like Georgia, Alabama, they wanted him bad because he was a true cover corner. And that just helped Indiana immensely because that was the other position that they were lacking in the secondary. So, but yeah, I think, Pons, Fisher, the guys up front, the Carpenter kid who came from James Madison, number 99, he's a really good player up front. And there's some guys that spot here and there that have done very well, but you got a defense in Indiana that's number one against the rush right now. And when you look at Ohio State's defense and Indiana's defense, and then flip the page and look at both offenses, they are as similar in the statistical categories than any team I've seen in a long while. There's very little difference between both ball clubs. Now, I don't get into who you did it against or who it was or stuff like that. You still have to execute. And that's one thing that I think Indiana's done very good. Don't take my word on it. Take the former coach at Ohio State's word, Urban Meyer, because he's been raising their praise for about the last month on how well they're coached, their coaches, and things of that nature, because they take their kids, they put them in the best possible position to have success, and very rarely are they out of position, especially on defense. So, they've had.
With that being said, where do you think Ohio State's offense can attack that Indiana defense? Where are the weaknesses?
Well, I think, if I look at it pure matchup, outside's going to be an area that I think Chip Kelly will exploit. But at the same time, I do think Chip Kelly's of the philosophy, he's going to come downhill at you. I mean, I don't see him thinking he's going to finesse his way around Indiana's front seven. If he's going to do anything, he's going to attack right downhill at them, because that's where Indiana, as in my opinion, is when teams try to do a lot of finesse stuff and try to get the ball on the perimeter. Indiana's pretty good of keeping leverage on an offense and turning it back inside where they've got the cavalry coming. Now, when you're matching up and you go one-on-one down the middle of the field, that's always the defense's worst nightmare. They don't want you downhill running at them. They would rather you be a type that wants to bounce it outside or do those type of things. And that's kind of what I see against Ohio State's defense. Same thing. When Penn State had their best run game against Ohio State was downhill runs. It wasn't trying to be all fancy and put the ball on the perimeter. Not that you can't do that, but I would think
John from YouTube was saying Haynes has them very fundamentally sound, which is kind of what you were just elaborating on.
Yeah.
And Haynes better. He's $1 million coordinator, man. Indiana spending the money. I love it.
You know how much I hired him for when I was coaching? Because I gave him his first job in college football. Brian Haynes,
Ball
the DC.
State?
He played at Ball State, but he came to a D3 school that I happened to be the head coach at, and he wanted to get into college football, so I paid him $10,000, $12,000 and gave him 3 meals and a place to lay his head at night. Now, he was with me for 1 year. You know, he had the it factor, knew he was going to be successful just because of the way he carried himself. He was a phenomenal linebacker at Ball State, and probably would have been in the league if he not had to messed up his back. But
you need to ask him for those 3 meals a day back.
Well, I thought I'd get at least maybe 2% finder's fee, you know, and I still hasn't seen it hit my bank account yet. But, you know, his mentality as a defensive coordinator is what they are on offense. And that all comes from Cignetti. He's an attack type of guy, no matter where you're at on the field. And he always wants to put the pressure on the opposing team. And for the most part, they've been able to do that all year. And that's why you've seen the differentials that you've seen. I mean, I think of the 9 games, they were like a total of 31 point differential on the teams that they played.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I want to give Mike Germanese give you a chance to ask any questions you have for Shannon.
What do you think is for Indiana? They seem to have struggled in the red zone this year. They're going to have to win this game for Indiana, they're going to have to at least get 1 or 2 stops in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Indiana is going to be able to figure out a way to do something they seemingly haven't done all year?
They did it against your boys at Michigan, the boys in blue.
Yeah, but we don't have a quarterback who could throw it forwards.
When you look at red zone touchdown scoring percentage, and I don't have it at my fingertips, but Indiana and Ohio State are very similar.
Some of the best.
Like Ohio State's probably like 38%, you know, defensive score, you know, touchdown against. And that happens when you give up 10.3 points a game on average. Indiana's given up 13.8 points a game on average. You know, Indiana's really been good inside the 5. I mean, they shut down Michigan after the third quarter turnover when Michigan had it 1st and goal from the 5. Same thing like at Penn State. I mean, Penn State had it inside the 5 twice and they couldn't even get it in. One was an interception and Ohio State fed them their lunch from the 3 on 3 straight plays. Those teams are just hard to score against, especially when you get into close quarters and you lose the vertical stretch. I mean, the horizontal stretch of the field. And those teams like Ohio State and even Indiana, it's tough to get scores on. So
yeah, Indiana's the TD percentage was 54.55 for their defense. You know, opponents are scoring on 54.55%, and Ohio State was 30.43. So that was a big difference. Ohio State was first in opponent red zone conversions, and Indiana is 14th. That's the only differentiating statistic I've even seen. Everything else is like
and I think between Ohio State and Indiana, I think the total amount of times the teams have been inside the 20 against both of them is somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 between both of them.
22 for Indiana and 23 for Ohio State, so it hasn't been much.
Right. I mean, so you know, they've all both been pretty good keeping teams out of their territory for the most part. And a lot of that comes from field position and stuff. But, you know, I think Ohio State's got 2 good running backs that I think that, you know, one of them reminds me of the kid from Washington, big, strong kid that run downhill. He's pretty physical, likes to give out punishment as much as he takes it. And, you know, both those guys.
That's Quinshon Junkins.
Yeah, they both got pretty good speed. Now, when you look at Indiana's running backs, they are similar in nature. They're maybe a little quicker here and there, but they're not the threat of taking a 3-yard gain and turning it into a 75-yard touchdown. They're not necessarily going to run away from anybody. Ohio State has guys that can run away from you.
They don't have the Travion Henderson.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, it has the makings to be a really good ball game. From that standpoint, one of the big algorithms that I just saw and I showed on my show was the I think ESPN ends up putting it out, but the projected score of the game was 24-20 Ohio State, and Ohio State had a 60% probability of winning and Indiana a 40% probability of winning. I mean, that's as close as you're going to get to 50-50 on any game. So that just tells you right there, when they throw all the numbers into the computer and spits out what are some of the advantages here and there, there's not many. There's really not.
Absolutely.
But I think
I tend to think it's going to be a closer game than people think, especially Buckeye media and Buckeye fans. We see the name Indiana, the national media, especially the SECs, having that same problem, seeing that emblem, and not giving it respect. But this is a completely different story than anything we've ever seen in the history of Indiana.
Well, the only thing that you can compare Indiana and Ohio State against are 3 common opponents: Nebraska, Northwestern, and Michigan State. And here are some statistics from those games. When you look at scoring margin differential, Ohio State was a plus 59 against Nebraska, Northwestern, and Michigan State. Indiana was a plus 103. Ohio State on yardage margin differential, Ohio State against those 3 common opponents was a plus 418, which is not, that's really good. Indiana was 576. Turnover margin, which I think at this time of year plays a bigger part in these type of games. Absolutely. Those 3 games, Ohio State was a plus 3 and Indiana was I think a plus 6 in those 3 games. And then the last one was explosive plays, which we just talked about, and the value that they bring in these type of games. And you hear every offensive coordinator talk about explosives. Against those 3 common opponents, Ohio State had 7 explosive plays on average, which is great. If you can get 3 to 4 a game, you're happy. Indiana was a plus 18 in explosive plays against those 3 common opponents. So
and that's an interesting stat.
Yeah. Now, again, that's not the holy grail of analytics or anything like that, because we all know, statistics and what they do.
We got a question from John again. Let me interrupt for a second. John wants to know, so who has the better coach? And this is a great question. I love this question.
I was thinking about that today from a staff perspective. Mm-hmm. Ohio State's got the old wily coaches like Knowles and Chip Kelly. These are the guys that have been around the game for a long time. They've cut their teeth and have their way of doing things, and maybe sometimes conservative in their approach or 2. And then you got 2 of the youngest coordinators in the Big Ten in the country with Shanahan and Bryant Haynes, where those guys have a little bit more let her hang and fly mentality, because young guys always have that, temperamental of, we're going to let things fly and we're not here to, play it conservative. I do think Ohio State's got an excellent staff. They've had an excellent staff ever since Tressel was there, and it's kept through it all the way through. The problem is at Ohio State, you can't breathe as a coaching staff, because if you give up any points against any team, they wanted to fire Knowles after the Michigan game 2 years ago, when they gave up like 600 yards in defense, because Knowles likes to play in man for man and Michigan was running by him, and they had JJ McCarthy. But I think overall you got to go with the age and the veteranship of those guys in terms of knowledge and playing in more of these type of games. But ever since this staff has been at Indiana, PA, they've played for championships. Their second, they went to Elon, and the team was 8-45. And I think it's the best quote I've heard from Cignetti is when he was at the Big Ten Media Days. Indiana was picked 17th, and he just made a comment before he even started talking about, I've been picked, last and second to last twice in his career. And both times that I was picked last or second to last, we ended up playing for the conference championship and winning it. He goes, I'm not saying that's anything, to chomp on, but it's just historical fact. And he was just kind of saying, pick me last. I don't care, because I have the proof that I can navigate whatever hardships we've got. And one of those teams was Elon, who was 8-45 before he came there. And they played James Madison for the conference championship at James Madison, and they beat them.
Yeah.
And so,
that's when James Madison was like, we got to have him.
Yeah. Right. Well, and James Madison was reeling off the wins too at that time too, at the FCS level. I mean, they were really good, but Cignetti's a really good coach. He's as good a coach as I've seen. And what I mean by that is his approach to how he runs these programs. You've heard him talk about blueprint. You've heard him talk about the way they do things. He's not a transactional coach. I mean, he doesn't even believe in goals at the beginning of the year saying you're going to win X amount of games and you're going to be the Big Ten championship. He wants to make sure that you're walking correctly as you walk out of the meeting room door and then out onto the field. I mean, he's very particular in the one day at a time mentality, and what was yesterday does not define who you are the next day, because you control those controllables. So he's as good a coach as I've seen in that arena of having the pulse of his kids and making the kids almost be mini hymns in terms of their approach to it. And that's why I think the James Madison kids that came with him from
made a big difference
to Indiana were vitally important, because they brought the attitude of winning into a locker room that used to hope to win to now
the culture
expecting to win. And those kids from JMU have showed them how to expect to win and not hope to win. And so that's the biggest difference.
We haven't given Rodney a chance to ask a question. You got anything?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I was thinking defense, but you kind of covered that. The only thing on offense, I think, they're so efficient, and it doesn't seem like, when you're winning by 30, you don't have to bring out any extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think they have anything that they're just going to plan? Do you think Cignetti, because I haven't followed him nearly as long as you have, if he's going to bring anything out early, if he's going to try and just go for the throat right away, or if he's going to try and be more?
Yeah, his mindset is from the word go, he's putting the metal to the pedal, so to speak. He's not he's not afraid to dial it up early and often in his mindset or what he expects on either side of the ball. Like I said, offensively speaking, they've been very good at the run pass option game. That has been something that I've seen, and that's because of Curtis Rourke. And
that RPO in the end zone, I think they need to run that more, man. When I saw that against Nebraska, that was hot.
They screwed themselves at Michigan when they called it and he threw the pick. That was more coach than I think it was him. But that's me looking at it from the what the hell are you doing mentality. But the RPO game for them has been really good, and the fact that they have spread the ball around amongst a multitude of receivers. That in kind of ways that Ohio State has done, that you can't just say we're going to take this guy away or that guy away, because then the other guy's the one that's going to beat you. And they've been able to do that. Surratt, he's one of those guys that is, you look at him, and you don't think anything about him, but then he goes out and makes a ton of plays. Now, he dropped 2 balls against Michigan that I would never thought the kid would have made those drops. And they were costing drops.
That's something Curt Cignetti said. We just didn't make the plays we usually make in the second half. And that's what kind of looked bad. He was saying that, I believe it was on the Urban Meyer podcast.
Yeah,
they did. To give a shout out to Hawkaholics there. They're on here saying what's up. They got a great Iowa podcast, man. That is awesome. It's fire. Go check it out. But just had to give them a little name drop here real quick.
They got a big one this week, and I like the Penn State Minnesota game. Minnesota has the knack to knocking people off at home. PJ's done it every year, and I wouldn't be surprised one bit if that happened to Penn State up at Minnesota this Saturday. So, yeah, but this game, I agree with you. I think it's got the makings to be a tight ball game. I'm not saying
they're my daughter's first Ohio State game. 9-year-old for her first Ohio State game is going to a top 5 matchup.
Yeah, I've got Friday night responsibilities on radio here in the Fort Wayne, Indiana area for high school football as they
nice.
Get ready for the semi. They play semi-state this week in Indiana, and then next week after Turkey Day is the state tournament for 1A through 6A. And so I'll be doing some of those games, then heading down to the bucket game. And that's the other thing.
I might be heading down to that game too. I may just see you there.
Yeah, that may be a chance. Well, that's what I'm hoping. I'm waiting for my schedule to see what we're doing with the ball games and stuff. But
cool.
Yeah, I just, this game, it has the chance to be a great one. I think Indiana, if you look at it saying who's got the pressure on them, I don't think there's any doubt that Ohio State's got the biggest pressure on them because they've got one loss. If Indiana would go into Ohio State and beat them, that would really hurt Ohio State in some respects when you talk about college football playoffs, being that they'd be a 2-loss team. But I tell people that they would have lost to the number 1 ranked team in the country and the 5th ranked team in the country. So
which would end up being the 2nd ranked team in the country at that point.
Probably. Yeah. But, but Indiana, in my view, I think Indiana is in the college football playoffs.
I do too. I agree. That's where I wanted to go next.
Regardless of
what do you
where
think about
they're
these SEC people? What do you think about them? Calling out Indiana for
they don't do their homework, and
they don't watch the games.
And they don't watch the games, and you're not going to convince anybody in the South anyway, other than the narrative that they want to spit you.
Just means more.
We can all argue why our team should be and not be open to why they shouldn't be, right?
Absolutely.
But
it's easy.
You look at Indiana and they talk about their schedule. Number one, schedules are made up long before anything. Then add to it that the Big Ten expands to 18 teams. Now, mind you, Big Ten plays 9 conference games. Oh, guess what SEC does? They play 8.
Mercer.
So they play, so they only play 8 conference games. So that's a big differential there. But when you have 18 teams in a conference, you're going to have some of these schedules that you may not play, whoever the top dogs in the conference is in any given year.
The best thing I've heard this week for that is every conference needs to play 10 conference games because the conferences are just too big. You need some more overlap.
Well, and I think it all will get adjusted or they'll retool how they
That's
separate.
What pisses me off about this year, though.
Yeah,
this was the perfect year for the Big Ten to have a Big Ten West and a Big Ten East. It would have been
awesome. Except the West would have been very bad in a lot of respects because the only team, maybe Minnesota and Illinois, but
Oregon.
Yeah, well, that's true too. I mean,
and Washington's decent.
I forget about the West Coast. You see how dumb I am, but that's one of them. Number 2 was before the season. Michigan was in the top 10. Everybody thought they were going to be really good. Everybody thought Maryland was going to be really good because they had come off an 8-win season. Nebraska as well. and I don't know if I said this already, every team that Indiana has played in the Big Ten were either no worse than 500, and all of them, for the most part that they played, all had winning records. Nebraska came into Bloomington at 5-2. Indiana played a UCLA team that had a lot of promise, and they were 1-0, and Indiana had to go to UCLA and play in Pasadena, and they were the first Big Ten team to do it. And for the longest time, were the only Big Ten team to win on the West Coast as well.
Yeah.
And so
it was both ways too, even the West coming east. Yeah.
Right. But everybody thought Washington and Michigan were going to be very good, even though they graduated and lost some coaches. But at the same time, you got two teams that were pretty darn good teams as well. I told somebody this the other day, because I think Michigan's got a damn good defense, and I'm not going to be convinced otherwise, because I think they're really good. If Curtis Rourke was in the maize and blue, Michigan would be in the top 5 in the country.
Yeah.
Because that's the difference between what Michigan is now and what Michigan was with J.J. McCarthy in the lineup. That is the big difference on why teams are successful, whether it's high school football, college ball, or NFL. It all resides in the quarterback. And when you've got one, it makes a world of difference. And there is a big differential between a 1 and a 2. You may not see it as a fan, but they do see it on the practice field in that regard. So, I mean, the SEC is always going to cry because they always want, they think they're the given.
Their whole team, their whole conference should just have a playoff.
Their whole conference should get in, and fine. If you want that, go formulate your own national championship and play a game at the end of the year. But they're crying because they don't want to be traveling that first playoff round game, because
that's what I'm gonna love, man.
They're scared to death.
The problem with the SEC too, these guys, is they complain about Indiana, but then you ask yourself, who has Texas played?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
Texas
if
has
you
no
took,
top 25 wins,
right?
And my even bigger problem with is, if I took Indiana's helmet and I took Ohio State's helmet and we played the exact same schedules, no one would be saying anything about Ohio State's schedule.
No, just like they didn't in Michigan's last year either.
Yeah.
Or Georgia's the year before that. I mean,
I think Georgia's got a little room for argument just because they've played at a lot of good teams and historically good teams.
And I think Georgia is probably going to get in it.
They are going to get in it. As long as they don't lose.
Yeah.
As long as they don't lose to Georgia Tech.
They're going to be mad, because they feel that they shouldn't have to go on the road week 1.
Yeah,
and they
that's
don't
what
want
the
to go
awesome
north.
thing about
That's
this playoff is.
That's
it
all.
Turned out,
that's
it
what
turned out perfectly for us Midwesterners. We want those guys to come in the snow. It's snowing today. It's snowing tomorrow. And hopefully in December, it's mid-December, it starts snowing again. And those boys have to come up here and put on their little coats and feel how numb you get when you get hit.
Well, right.
That ball even hits you in the fingertips. You're like,
well, let me ask you this: do you think your star receiver from Florida was dreading practice outside today when they went out there and probably practiced in the snow, and he was wanting his parka? He hasn't
probably.
Seen,
but you know what?
He hasn't seen snow.
He's earning it for the NFL. I mean, he's going to have to go to Green Bay and play at Lambeau Field someday.
That
so
kid,
guess what?
Phenomenal.
He's going to be prepared.
He's phenomenal.
I think those kids from down south will come up here. It might hit them at first, but once you get going, it's football. It doesn't matter. Unless there's like 2 inches of snow, 3 inches of snow where it's blowing and you can't get your game going, it's just going to be another football game. But how awesome is it going to be? The way
could
things
it
are
hurt the
set up
style
right
they play in the SEC though? Because some of these teams
I think Georgia can ground and pound, but they have a running game.
Georgia came to
Alabama. Texas might be in trouble.
Yeah, Georgia came to Notre Dame, I think it was 2 years ago, and they almost lost. They won in the latter part of a game. It was a hell of a game. But they don't want to come on the road because they know it's going to be hard for a team, no matter who they are, to go on the road week 1 of a playoff and have to go play somewhere else rather than home. It's, the travel and the disruption and everything that goes with it.
Pons and Smith went to the same high school. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. That's good stuff.
What's interesting, there's 3 former Hoosiers on the Michigan or on the Ohio State coaching staff. Justin Fry, the offensive line coach, played in Indiana. Michael Hunter, who's a GA at Ohio State, and then the co-defensive coordinator from last year, Matt, he's their safeties coach. Say that again.
I think it's Guerreri.
Yeah.
Guerreri. Yeah.
So there is some other stories in lines in this game as well that are interesting from that point of view. And then Brian Haynes was also a GA under Urban Meyer for a year at Ohio State.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of different, those type of scenarios that are kind of in the background when you talk about these two teams playing each other. And the one thing too is Indiana, and for the most part, has played Ohio State pretty good in the last few years. I mean, it was in 2020 during the COVID year that Ohio State had to hang on in that 42.
They played good last year.
Game. Yeah, Indiana's problem against Ohio State always has been stamina.
Yeah,
like being able to play 4 quarters against them because they just didn't have all the right pieces that they needed. That may be different this year in terms of having the right pieces. I don't know if that's going to be enough to get over the hump with Ohio State. But I do think I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana wins at Ohio State. It would not surprise me based upon the way they have played all year. And
it wouldn't surprise me, but it sure as shit pissed me off.
You think it won't piss a lot of people off? I think Ryan Day is probably going to be the other one that's going to be hiding after that one. But Ryan Day is a hell of a coach. I wish people would get off his back a little bit because I know that they want the national championships and things like that. But you look how many games that guy's won. He's played in the Big Ten championship game. Yeah, he's come up short in the Natty and things of that nature. And it doesn't help that the team up north is kind of beating you up the past 3 years, and then they went on and go and win a national championship. That doesn't help the thing, but that doesn't mean he's a bad coach because I think it's a cool thing that Chip Kelly's with him.
Love it.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest thing going on in this game is the fact that here's a guy that's running his offense that he played for at New Hampshire and gave him his first opportunity to be a college coach. And now he's there running.
It's like a father-son relationship.
Absolutely.
Too.
I saw more emotion out of Ryan Day against Penn State after a game when him and Chip Kelly came together after that game. And that let you know how much pressure that was on that game for Ryan.
Ryan Day's father passed away, committed suicide actually at a young age. I want to say it was 8, somewhere between 8 and 11. I think it was 8. So I'm sure he is like a father figure too.
Oh yeah. So, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for Day and Chip Kelly. I mean, I was still coaching when Chip was around and started dabbling with the spread offense at Oregon and got to listen to him many a time and actually got a chance to talk to him here and there about their offense and he was he was one of those guys that changed football, with the no huddle and the spread along with Rich Rodriguez. Those two guys were probably the two biggest guys that invented the spread offense the way it is today. And Chip's got a lot of good stuff now.
All right. Before we get you out of here,
all righty.
What is your final score prediction?
Oh man, I think it's going to be as close as 4 points. So I don't buy the spread that they're given at 12.5. With it,
and that's money going to it. So anytime you have Ohio State and they're
it's actually down to 10.5 now.
It opened at 10.5, went up, and now it's
13.5. It was up 13 at one point.
It's coming back down. It seems
Indiana's been a favorite, but no more than 7 points up until the Michigan game, and all of a sudden Vegas made them a 15-point favorite against Michigan. I thought maybe they got tired of paying all the Indiana fans the boatload of money because Indiana was covering every week. And Indiana and Ohio State has actually got a good record against the spread against Ohio State. So that's one thing for if you want to play the spreads and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a close game. I wouldn't be surprised. I think Indiana in a 30-26 game, 27-21 type of ball game. I do think Indiana wins. And the reason why I say they win is I just think they're playing a game right now where they have a lot of belief and they're not afraid to go tee it up with anybody across from them. So I don't believe that the Ohio State mystique has any bearing on them as a team, where in years past I didn't believe that. I thought
you punch the bully in the mouth, all of a sudden the bully becomes the bully.
Yeah. But I do think it's going to be a tight ball game. I really do. I think I'd be surprised either way that it's not a tight ball game for the better part, if not the whole game on Saturday. And it doesn't look like it's going to be bad weather either. So that's the other thing you always worry about this time of year is I think it's supposed to be in the 40s and overcast the last I heard. Now that may have changed, as you all know, being in the Midwest, stick around, it usually changes. But that's what the last I heard was in the mid 40s overcast and very, very little wind, which is another surprise because usually this time of year, the wind is pretty kicked up. So
I'm not sure if that's better. That's probably better for Indiana than it is for Ohio State.
I don't think any offense likes to play against wind. I never liked it, no matter if you were good, bad, or indifferent. It's just you're cutting the game in half essentially because of what you can or can't do against the wind or with the wind. So, but no, I think it's going to be a good game, and I'm anxious to see how Curtis Rourke does because he's got ice in his veins. He doesn't let things affect him, which I think is a huge advantage for him as a quarterback. And, he was the Mid-American Conference Player of the Year 2 years ago, and that tells you all you need to know about his ability. And I think Indiana has answered the question on whether or not a bunch of group of five guys can come into the Big Ten and play competitively.
Yep. Yeah, it's JMU in the Big Ten, and they're doing
that was the big question going into the year. Even mine. I mean, that was a big question mark because they had a lot of guys from the G5, and not that they weren't good players, but were they going to be able to hold up on a Big Ten schedule, irregardless of who they didn't play?
So give us a little bit of an update what your podcast is all about and where people can find you.
Yeah. Well, when I don't have technical problems, I broadcast on Monday and Thursday, more of a live stream than anything. Hoosier Football Tailgate, part of the Believe Network. So Hoosier Football Tailgate on Believe is what I use. And like I said, Monday and Thursdays Monday I use as a recap, and Thursdays I usually do a pretty big breakdown of who the Hoosiers are going to play against. So some video, some things of that nature, trying to point out who's good or point out what was bad or what was good. And, I said today, I thought Ohio State outplayed Oregon. Damon Gabriel's who beat Ohio State.
Yeah. Well, thanks, John, for showing up, too. John just posted again and said, good show. He appreciates it for putting this on. But, John, thanks for coming, man. You brought some knowledge, too, for us. It was great. And he, I believe John must be a Hoosier fan, so thanks for coming on. And he may have followed you over.
Maybe.
John's one of your –
well, I couldn't go
didn't
live
have a last name or anything else. So.
I couldn't go live tonight. I had to pull it off and ultimately do a record. And so stupid.
Feel free to share some of this to your fans.
Absolutely.
Too.
I appreciate you guys having me on. And again, I think it's going to be a great game for the fans here, regardless of who ends up winning. And, but I do think that the Big Ten gets 4, and I do think one of those is Indiana. And absolutely. I think we all should be pulling for anybody in the group of 12 games so that the Big Ten can at least pound their chest a little bit harder against the SEC.
Absolutely. I hope those home games come, man. That's really what everyone in the Big Ten country is looking forward to. Seeing Georgia play in the snow, seeing Alabama, Texas play in the snow. And oh man, it'd just be so great, man.
That's the best part
now rocking.
That's the best part of this playoff. How many times have we traveled down south?
Every time.
Yeah,
bowl games and
every bowl game.
De facto home games for some of these schools, and now they finally get to come down here in
And they're pissing and
our
moaning.
weather. Yeah, and they're crying about it. But that's also ESPN just being ESPN.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, Kirby's on there trying to market. You know what I think they want to do? I think they want to downplay Indiana as much as they can so that they can jump ahead just enough to get that home field advantage.
Well, they're trying to put doubt in the minds of the committee.
Yeah, absolutely.
And question why are they thinking the way they're thinking when, Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama are more household names than Indiana. So It is what it is. Those guys are all politicians anyway down south. Like Tuberville.
Oh, you know what? You probably kind of like this video, so I'm going to go ahead and play it while you're on here, Shannon. So everyone take a listen to this. This is great. Just some Indiana environment.
Yeah.
And the championship is in the rear view mirror comment. That dude was on fire, man.
Yeah. Well, hi, guys. I appreciate you having me. And safe travels to all who are heading to Ohio State. And it should be a great day in the shoe.
Yeah, we'll talk later, man. Take care. And thanks
partner.
for coming on and talking some Indiana football, bringing that knowledge.
All right, partner. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Have a good one.
Yep.
You too.
Take care. All right, boys. Well, man, we've been on here a while, so long night. Really what I wanted to get back to is just a little bit on Michigan. We know we have the allegations that they have to respond to, the NOA that they have to respond to coming Saturday. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, the problem, I want to know what's in there so bad. The problem now is now the NCAA gets 60 days. And we know the NCAA, if they can find a slower way to do it, they somehow find a way to do it even slower.
Yeah. By 60 days, they mean a year, summertime, maybe.
No, so Michigan responds.
No, I'm serious. They'll find a way. They'll appeal their own appeal.
Yeah, because then once the NCAA says, okay, here's the penalty, then Michigan's going to say, well, no. Then it's got to go to infractions. Then the infractions will rule, and then Michigan will say no. Then they're going to bring in a court case, and then all of a sudden you're going to hear, well, we'll do this, you do that, we do this, you do that, and they're going to come to an agreement when they could have just came to the agreement now because they both know what the agreement's going to be already, and just get it done with.
Draw it out a little longer, why don't you?
Some people are going to like the agreement. Some people aren't going to like the agreement. I think in this day and age, it all comes down to money.
I think I'm going to love it.
See, I think you're not. I think it all comes down to money, and they know it comes down to money.
Oh, man, everybody tearing down some banners up north. Tear them down.
They're not tearing down nothing.
Tear them down. Take that shit down. It's disgusting.
It's all about money.
Yeah, that's what we said in the Tressel era, too. It didn't happen.
Yeah,
NCAA will find a way.
Well,
what do you think about the McElwain retiring at Central Michigan? Is this part of it?
Oh, no, that has nothing. That's all their business. That's not even on our stuff. No, was he there? Yeah, he was there.
Yeah.
Was he a coach at Michigan before? Were there guys who used to coach at Michigan before? Yeah. But that falls all on them. But yeah, there's definitely, you retire 3 days before they need to
discuss this. It's real sketchy. All these check marks keep coming. Check. So we're gonna see. First, Harbaugh's not gonna get suspended. He's gonna be there. He'll be there for the game. They're gonna hire a lawyer. That didn't happen. Check. Then nothing's gonna happen after that. Well, he still got suspended 3 more games. Check. So there's more coming. It's coming down the pipes. Sorry for all the Michigan fans. Last year I had to be a little bit more diplomatic because we were Big Ten backers. They're going to get slammed, dude.
They're not getting slammed. I'll bet you on.
I'll bet you on that, yeah. We'll have to come up with a little friendly bet.
What you see happening on Michigan doesn't happen if they're going to get slammed.
Yeah,
you don't see guys like
What
these
do
guys. You don't see guys like the #1 recruit in the country committing if they're going to get slammed.
Oh, there's still time for him to leave.
No. There's enough lawyers involved where Michigan knows exactly where they're going with this.
TJ Chapman, hello, Elizabeth Smith says.
There's enough.
Oh,
there's
TJ's
enough.
still out there.
Should
Hey,
they get,
Elizabeth, you got to
should
follow
they
her.
get slammed? Yeah, they should get slammed. Will they get slammed? They're not going to get slammed.
Only time will tell. Well, Rodney, you got anything on it?
I mean, I just want it to be over, but it won't be.
Yeah,
I was like,
it's time.
It's gonna be drug out for another.
I mean, even for an Ohio State fan, it is time to come to a conclusion. I mean, I love this being drawn out to be in the back of the big Blues heads, but come on, it's time. NCAA, do something.
Oh no, you got at least what? Court case, 60 days.
Yeah, it'll be a while.
Maybe 2026. By the time it gets, if you think about it, it's going to take 6 months before they go before any board. And then by the time they get a court case, by the time the lawyers drag that out, mid 2026.
Yeah. That scares me.
But mid 20.
Ironic that this is coming 1 week before the Ohio State Michigan game.
Yeah, when they set that date.
By mid 2026, the NCAA might not even exist.
Yeah, so they might be evaporated by then.
You got to push this through the court. Maybe that's what Michigan's trying to stall.
I mean, have that coaching
get some out of this.
Yeah. Well, if a couple more of these big lawsuits go through that everybody keeps hitting the NCAA with, they're not going to exist.
We'll see. All right, boys. Well, I almost said Big Ten backers. Buckeye backers are out again, formerly the Big Ten backers. So come and check us out. Follow us on social media. Do all that good stuff. Give us a subscribe. Give us a share. Hey, and check these guys out. Both writers for College Football Dogs. Mike Germanese. Rodney Potts has all your Ohio State information. Mike, you write about everything. All the Big Ten.
I love it. As much as I'm a Michigan fan, I actually do. I respect Ohio State. I like their
for sure.
They got grit. Just because you hate something, you got to respect their tradition and stuff. So, and
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, my wife and my brother-in-law are both Buckeyes. So
there we go. All right. At least you got some good people in your family. All right. Well, peace out, boys. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Maybe you two will be on the morning show tomorrow morning. Or Sunday morning.
We'll see. And then next week we get to talk about the game.
Talk about the game. Awesome. All right, boys.
The execution.
Buckeye backers are out. Peace. God bless.